Rain tapped softly against the hospital window. The night was calm except for the hum of machines and the faint beeping of monitors. Lina adjusted the blanket around her little patient, a boy no older than 6. His name was Ethan Jr. He had been through too much for someone so small. Lina smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Her shoes pinched her feet. Her scrubs were faded, and her hands smelled faintly of antiseptic. It had been a long shift, but she didn't mind. She had always found comfort in caring for others, even when she had little left for herself. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The screen showed her landlord's message, reminding her that rent was due next week. She sighed. Between hospital bills for her mother and rising prices, her paycheck barely kept her afloat. The idea of buying anything new, even a dress, felt like a luxury from another life. As she turned off the bedside lamp, she whispered, "Sleep well, sweetheart." The child stirred but didn't wake. She sat near the window, her reflection merging with the faint city lights outside. She thought about the life she dreamed of, a life where she didn't have to count every coin before payday. Her thoughts broke when she heard a low voice behind her. "Thank you, Nurse Lina." She turned. In the doorway stood a man in a dark coat, his expression calm but tired. His name was Daniel Cross, Ethan's father. She knew his name from the patient file, but nothing more. What she didn't know was that Daniel was one of the city's most successful CEOs, a widowed man who rarely showed emotion. "It's nothing," Lina said quietly. "He's a brave little boy." Daniel nodded. "He talks about you, says you make the room feel safe." Lina smiled, surprised. "He's the strong one. I just make sure he's comfortable." Daniel watched her for a moment, studying the gentle way she spoke, the tired grace in her movements. He was used to polished boardrooms, not humble kindness like hers. When he left the room, the faint sound of his footsteps faded down the hall, leaving only the quiet hum of the hospital. Lina leaned her head back and closed her eyes. She didn't know it yet, but this ordinary night would change everything. The next morning came softly. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting pale stripes across the hospital floor. Lina walked slowly toward the nurse's station, holding her usual cup of instant coffee. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours, but work didn't wait. As she scribbled updates in a patient chart, she heard someone call her name. "Lina." She turned and froze. Daniel Cross stood there, sharp as ever, in a dark blue suit. His presence drew glances from other nurses. He wasn't a man who blended in. "Mr. Cross," she said, straightening her posture. "Is Ethan all right?" "He's doing better, thanks to you." He paused. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Personal." Lina blinked. "Personal?" He nodded. "There's a charity dinner this weekend. My company's hosting it. I need to attend, but I haven't been to a social event since my wife passed. Ethan keeps telling me I should try again. I was wondering if you'd go with me." Lina's mind went blank. "You mean, as your guest?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. "As my date." The hallway seemed to go quiet. The other nurses pretended not to listen, but everyone could feel the moment hang in the air. Lina's heart raced. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Her, a tired nurse with scuffed shoes, going to a Millionaire's gala. "Mr. Cross," she said gently, "I can't. I don't even own a proper dress." Daniel's expression softened. "Then let me take care of that." "I can't accept something like that," she whispered. "You've done so much for my son," he said. "This isn't charity, it's gratitude, and maybe a chance to enjoy a night that isn't about hospitals or bills." Lina stared at him, unsure whether to say yes or run away. Finally, she nodded slightly. "All right, just this once." Daniel smiled for the first time that morning. It was a small smile, but warm. As he left, Lina stood still, her heart fluttering with fear and disbelief. She had no idea where this would lead, only that for the first time in years, someone saw her as more than a nurse. The boutique smelled faintly of lavender and silk. Lina stood near a mirror, her fingers brushing a price tag that made her stomach twist. She had never been inside a place like this. Every dress looked too fine, too expensive for her hands to touch. Daniel stood a few steps away, speaking quietly to the store clerk. "Something elegant," he said, "but simple. She doesn't like to stand out." When Lina emerged from the dressing room in a soft cream dress, Daniel looked up. His words caught in his throat. The dress wasn't glamorous, it was graceful, like her. The fabric fell lightly around her knees, the color gentle against her skin. "I feel ridiculous," Lina said, tugging at the hem. "You look perfect," Daniel said. She looked away, cheeks warm. I can't take this. It must cost a fortune. Consider it borrowed, he said softly. You'll give it back after the dinner. Lina smiled faintly. Borrowed, she repeated, almost to convince herself. As they left the store, rain began again, soft and steady. They walked side by side, Daniel holding the umbrella. He noticed how she tilted her face toward the rain, as if it calmed her. For him, it was the first peaceful moment he'd had in months. Neither of them said much, but something gentle formed between them, something quiet and new. The ballroom shimmered with golden light. Laughter and music floated through the air. Lina stepped in slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Every head seemed to turn, not because she was the most glamorous, but because her presence was quiet and real. Daniel walked beside her, introducing her to people she had only seen on magazine covers. She smiled politely, though her heart pounded in her chest. When she caught sight of her reflection in a tall mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. You're doing great, Daniel whispered. I feel like I'm pretending to be someone else, she said. He smiled. No, you're just being seen for the first time. They sat at a round table near the stage. Conversations about investments and markets floated around her. But Lina's thoughts were simpler. She thought of her patients, of the boy asleep in the hospital bed, and of how strange it was to be here, sharing a table with people who lived in a different world. Later, as the music slowed, Daniel turned to her. Would you dance with me? Lina hesitated. It's been years since I danced. Then let's make tonight the first time again. He held out his hand. She took it. They moved slowly across the floor, her small hand resting on his. The music faded into a blur of warmth and light. For that one song, time stood still. Morning came with soft light. The hospital was quiet again. Lina walked down the familiar hallway, her old shoes squeaking on the floor. Yet something inside her had changed. When she entered Ethan Jr.'s room, the boy smiled wide. Dad said you looked like a princess last night. Lina laughed gently. A tired princess, maybe, he giggled, then reached for her hand. Will you come again? I'm here every day, she said softly. Daniel arrived moments later, holding 2 coffees. Morning, Nurse Lina. She smiled. Morning, Mr. Cross. Daniel, he corrected. They stood in a brief silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward anymore. He handed her one of the coffees. I wanted to thank you, he said, for saying yes, for reminding me that life doesn't stop when we're afraid to live it. Lina looked at him, eyes calm. You reminded me too. That kindness still matters. He smiled. Ethan wants to know if we can have dinner together again. All 3 of us. Lina looked down at the boy, whose small fingers gripped her hand. She nodded. I'd like that. The morning light grew brighter, painting gold across the walls. For the first time in years, Lina didn't feel invisible. She didn't need the dress anymore. The moment had given her something deeper, something that couldn't be bought or borrowed. She turned toward the window. The city outside glowed with a new day, and somewhere deep in her heart, a quiet hope began to bloom.